Awesome. Thank you. It is an honor to be with you all. Thank you so much to the SMED Aerospace Engineering Sciences Department for inviting me to speak. Such fond memories of Boulder, some poor decisions as well, but mainly fond memories. Really life-defining moments, decisions were made here, right? Should I major in aerospace? Should I join ROTC? Should I fly for the Air Force? Should I skip Professor Argro's aerodynamics class? That was a bad decision. I could stand here and tell you plenty of things about the society you're about to enter regarding aerospace, or I could tell you fighter pilot stories. I figured I'd go with the latter. Yeah. So any good fighter pilot story starts with, so there I was. So there I was. My mission that day was to clear a missile on the F-15C out to 2.5 Mach. That's 2.5 times the speed of sound, around 1,500 miles an hour. I was at 50,000 feet at 1,200 miles an hour, and I'm diving into the point to get to my airspeed. And right then, my fire light goes out for one of my engines, goes on. It's telling me that there's a fire in one of my engines. And I'm like, ah! Terrified for a second, because I got a few seconds and I need to make some smart decisions right there. And so new jet, new day, different story. So there I was in the back seat of an F-15. I was teaching someone else how to fly the F-15. They've never been in the aircraft before. So I'm in the back seat, we do the mission, we're coming into land, we're a little low on gas, and I can't see out in front of me. I see like their head, but I can't see the runway or anything. And so we touch down, it's a pretty good landing, and right away I feel our aircraft sink to the left and our wing starts to crash into the runway. I have about 0.2 seconds to respond to that, or we're going to go off the side of the runway and cartwheel the aircraft, and we'd have to eject. So new jet, new day, different story. So there I was. I was testing the F-35. And the mission for me that day was I had to fire the missile, a heat-seeking missile, at the extreme airspeed and G-forces at 2,000 feet. It was a dream test point. So fun. I'm going down to 2,000 feet, 800 miles an hour, and I'm supposed to pull 8 Gs, 8 times the force of gravity. So I dive into the point. The Pacific Ocean is screaming up at me, and I get to the point where I'm about to start pulling the Gs. I say over the radio, fire in 3, 2, the sound over the canopy drowns out my voice. I tense all my body muscles, which are a lot because I'm really strong. I tense all my body muscles and I pull 8 Gs and I'm right there at the point. Everything is exactly where I need it to be. And I press the pickle button. And the missile misfires. It doesn't go off. And I realize right then that oh man. We're all living in the midst of stories, aren't we? Intertwined, overlapping narratives. But where are we in a story? Sometimes in the midst of excitement, sometimes in the midst of boredom, like you all probably listening to my speech. Other times we're in the midst of perceived failure, perceived success. Sometimes we're up against very difficult, scary moments. As if those weren't scary enough. So there I was. I was maneuvering my jet against my wingman. We were in a training mission over the Gulf of Mexico on February 20th, 2008. We were dogfighting that day. So we're maneuvering towards each other. I'm a pilot, I gotta speak with my hands, right? We're maneuvering towards each other, but this is a different situation. At first, we're 5,300 feet away from each other, and he's a speck on my canopy, but he's not moving. It's like we're on a collision course, which is not unfamiliar to me or to anyone that dogfights, because that happens. But for a second goes by, he's still on a collision course. And then another second goes by, and we're going to collide. So, we collide. He impacts 20 feet behind my cockpit, combined closure about 500 miles an hour. Scary stuff. And I sit there, immediately get thrown up in the jet, and I'm tumbling through the sky. And like, it's not a fluid memory at all, but I'm trying to get control of the aircraft, nothing. There's nothing there. I look up and I remember the fire lights are going off. The aircraft's telling me it's on fire. And then I distinctly remember looking up. We have 3 rear view mirrors in the F-15. The plane is completely engulfed in flames. I reach down, I pull the ejection handles, and I'm out. Mass chaos, massive disorientation to eerie silence as I'm under parachute wondering if this is a dream or not, and it is not a dream. And then I reach down, and I make a mistake that nearly cost me my life. Regret, sorrow, shame, they're a part of all of our stories. How do we grow from these moments? How do we support others that may not see the hope in the midst of the pain? Because we are all there at times. Still, other stories are filled with joy. So there I was, shooting an M16 rifle. I was a cadet here, a freshman. We're down at Buckley Air Force Base, and in the stall next to me shooting an M16 was another cadet. I'd never seen her before. She was a year older. She was a horrible shot. She was confident and funny and smoking hot. And I knew that I needed to go The point of not completing these stories is quite simple. Since we don't know where we are in the timeline of our stories, what we need to do is to be present. So there I was. Be present. Don't be too quick to get to the conclusion. Don't be too quick to write off certain people or experiences, labeling them as meaningless, but rather find meaning in the way you approach your moments. You want to find success? Be present. Be passionate. Be kind. The things you do each day that may seem mundane, that may feel unimportant or not grand enough to demand your attention, those things are really more important than the climatic moments, because they prepare you for the climatic moments. Live in the moment. Live in the moment. Don't live for a moment. And I'm not saying don't have goals. Goals are great. I got them. It's just goals don't define who you are. Back to the stories from earlier. I'll give you the conclusions. I know you're dying to hear them. The firelight. Remember, I was going really fast and that firelight went off? It's a bad circuit. There's nothing. Just a bad indication. Terrified me, but nothing happened. Sometimes life may seem dire, but it is not. Don't overreact. Be patient. Take a breath. Remember that landing gear collapse that happened? Whew. I was in the back seat and I was prepared to take over, and that's exactly what happened. Right as we settled on our left wing, I threw the engines to afterburner and we took off again. We came back around, low on fuel, and we caught the emergency cable at the end of the runway, landed on 2 wheels, caught the cable, and stopped right before we went off the side of the runway. Sometimes moments are going to require decisive action, which requires preparation and discipline. Your work ethic, it matters. All right, that missile that didn't launch. Remember, I was going real fast, pulling 8 Gs? Mea culpa. That was my fault. See, I was flying a test F-35, and in that aircraft, you actually have to hold the pickle button for longer than I'm used to holding the pickle button, and the missile got misfired because of me. Guess what? Sometimes you're prepared and you're still going to make stupid decisions. It's going to happen, I guarantee it, and it's going to be your fault. It's okay. I believe that everything happens for a reason, a God-directed providence, not to be used as an excuse, but rather a source of hope. But even if you don't believe that, you can appreciate that the most impactful growth typically comes from failure. Even from the most tragic failure, there is hope. Speaking of my collision story, it was a failure on both our parts that we had the collision. After I ejected, it was my failure, because as I was under parachute, I reached down and I detached all my survival equipment. I didn't have a life raft, radios, signaling devices, food, water. I hit the Gulf of Mexico waters, and the waters were in the 60s. No one could find me. And then a 25-foot fishing vessel that was out for the day, 70 miles south of Panama City in 6-foot waves, happened upon me, and they picked me up, and I was rescued. My wingman didn't make it, guys. He was an amazing person, and I try to honor his memory through the way that I live my life. You never know when your life is going to end. You don't. It's good to remind ourselves that sometimes, which means what we need to think about is how we live out our priorities. Be intentional with your time. Do things for the right reasons. Don't be afraid to admit your mistakes. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay. And don't assume that you know how the end of the story is going to end. Little did I know as I sat in those waters thinking that I was going to die after that collision, that collision would be a defining moment for the Air Force. It would be a catalyst. I would be a part of that. For the Air Force to adopt life-saving technology on fighter aircraft that avoids collisions with the ground and with other aircraft. It's called automatic air collision avoidance and automatic ground collision avoidance. It takes control away from the pilot at the last second and saves them. I did not know that my story was going to end up with me being a part of something much grander, much bigger. Yet, I still struggle with that failure, and that story is not over. It's an ongoing story. There is still hope, though. Oh, and that woman that was shooting an M16 next to me. So I didn't go talk to her. I was terrified. I was like, no way, she's too hot. If she's watching, I just want her to know that she's really hot. A year and a half later, ROTC put me under her as she was my boss. So I worked for her. So I was forced to talk to her. Of course, we became best friends. First woman I ever kissed, first woman I ever dated. We hit 20 years this month. 4 amazing kids. Yeah. I know you guys are clapping for her, so yes. I don't know how she's done it. It's remarkable. But don't forget, I didn't go talk to her. I was terrified. I didn't do it. Like, the Air Force forced me to have to deal with her. Don't let amazing opportunities pass you by because you're too nervous. Many of your life decisions is going to take courage. And I think a lot of you are actually proving that by being here right now. Yeah. So, we don't know the end of our stories. We just know what has happened up to this point. Move forward from here. Not from the failures or successes of your past, from here, from this moment. Start working on the rest of your story. And please realize that your story is intertwined with those around you, inseparable. That is an awesome responsibility for all of us to take seriously. So there I was, at the precipice of graduating from the University of Colorado Smead Aerospace Engineering Sciences Department. Unsure about my future, excited for the possibilities, humbled by the support of so many that got me to this point. And then thank you for allowing me to share some of my stories, becoming part of my journey.